Super.
Yes.
As soon as I get the heads up from Deb, we're ready to go. So doctor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, guys. I'm Chaitanya. So I'm a PGY2 that went to Ukraine. So I titled this Fanning the Flames of Hope. The picture you see here is a furnace. This is a furnace that we had inside of our medical tent in Ukraine. The temperatures would get pretty cold. So you have to keep wood burning throughout the day and especially at night. And this is a good analogy to the Ukrainian people, the refugees that were trying to cross from Ukraine into Poland. You see these people that would have traveled days, several hundred miles to escape the conflict, the war that was happening. And they just clung on to the hope that they can get to safety and, again, find another better life outside of what was happening in their homeland. So our job, on the humanitarian side was to just provide that hope, let them know that there was a better tomorrow for these people. So a little bit of a background into the Ukraine-Russia war. So this started February 24th. Putin essentially announced to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. So shortly after that, he launched missiles, airstrikes, and a full invasion into Ukraine. So in response, the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, called on his country to fight back, essentially banning all male Ukrainian citizens between the ages of 18 to 60 from leaving the country. These are the casualties of war. It's been a little over 2 months now. There's been about 4,000 Ukrainian civilians who have died, over 4,000 who were wounded. From the Ukrainian military, it's been about 3,000 who were killed, about 10,000 wounded. And from the Russian military, about half of that. This is a sequelae of war now. So since the onset of this war over the past 2 months, this is Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II. More than 5 million Ukrainians have left the country and over a quarter of the population have been displaced. These are some pictures of the current situation since the war started. This is a picture when the war initially started with Mariupol, the city that's been under siege. There's essentially one steel plant that's standing, and the soldiers inside are still holding out. They refuse to surrender. The city's been essentially bombed down to rubble. This is an aerial view of a residential area. You can see hit by a drone strike. And this was more recently. This is from a city called Lviv. This is on the Western Front. This is about 45 to 50 miles from where we were at the border providing medical aid. And this was actually the day that I got there. So I'm going to leave the global, like the political side out of it, just focus on the humanitarian response. So the following pictures are some of the nonprofits that were there. So Humanity First was a nonprofit. This medical tent that you see here is actually one of the few medical tents that were in the refugee camp. They had a physician and a paramedic or 2 paramedics throughout the day, but at nighttime they were staffed with only paramedics. Right across this, they also had a tent just serving fresh food, freshly brewed coffee, just warm food in the cold temperature. This is the World Central Kitchen. I think a couple of years ago, they actually won the Nobel Prize. But essentially, they were there to provide warm meals throughout the day, whether you're a refugee, a volunteer. They were always making fresh food. We all know UNICEF. This is Orphans Promise. So this tent is, so the goal of this nonprofit was essentially to identify orphan individuals, orphans who had lost their parents, or identify kids who were high risk, like young females who could be trafficked, and so forth, and just provide them an opportunity to be in a safe environment until they were able to, find the next stone in their life. This is, if you look in the background here, it's actually T-Mobile. Not a huge fan of T-Mobile, but they were great in Poland. So I actually got a SIM card in America. I was told it's going to work over there. Got there. I landed. It only allowed me to call America, which was useless. So I had no way of using Google Maps or anything. Luckily, the car I rented had navigation system, so I was able to get around. But T-Mobile, they were giving out free SIM cards to volunteers or refugees for 1 month. And it was super helpful. Then this is actually probably one of my favorite tents, if not my favorite tent. I believe this is a Dutch nonprofit. So this tent, just the story behind this was one of the volunteers said, just before the war, they received an order for about 25,000 pizzas, small pizzas. And then after the war started, they were never delivered. So they were just serving pizza to everyone. They would just bake it right there and just serve it. So fresh pizzas every single day. And yeah, it was essentially for a lot of people, the favorite tent to go to. This is United Six, another nonprofit. The tent you see here, it's actually a shared tent between the nonprofit that I went through to work with, which I'll touch on later. But United Six is a nonprofit that started off in metropolitan New York, and then it just since expanded. This tent is for women and children only, and they were able also providing food. This is great for me. The closest Indian restaurant for me to go to was like an hour and 20 minutes away. So I was definitely not doing that. But unfortunately, it was closed when I got there because the week before they all got COVID. And so they were out. This tent, this is a nonprofit. I, for the life of me, cannot pronounce that, but it's an animal rescue nonprofit, cats, dogs, essentially any animals that were abandoned or just found to be strays. They were picked up and they're just being tended to here. So a recap till now, it's about day 18 or day 19 since the war started. I reached out to SSF. This is the organization. It's called Serviteurs Sans Frontières, or it translates to roughly, it's an Israeli French-based company. It translates to Rescuers Without Borders. So I emailed them around the first week of July, waited about a week, didn't hear. And then, obviously people my generation are impatient. So I went on the internet, I went on Reddit and I actually posted, hey, is there a nonprofit I can go through to do this? So terrible idea because there are ex-military people and so forth recruiting people. They're offering 1 to 2 week survival course and then deployment into Mariupol and other cities, literally in the heat of the war. So I deleted my post and I said, I'm just going to wait. I'm not going into war. Finally, about a week later, SSF replied, and this is our medical tent. And they said, we need you this week. So I had a couple of days notice to book my flight and everything and arrange my stay. So yeah, so this is a picture in regional hospital. I walked past it probably hundreds of times and I never read the plaque. And the reason I put this is because the day before I was leaving, I was pretty apprehensive. I was like, am I really going into an area where is likely, I think 2 days before I left, Russia said we were going to take nuclear options to the Baltic if Sweden and Denmark get involved. And I was like, well, this would be a horrible way to die. I was just thinking about all this, anxious, and then I walked past this plaque and I read the plaque, which I'll zoom in on. But essentially, it was sort of a coincidence. Back in 8th grade, and I'm going way back here, I can't for the life of me remember what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, but back in 8th grade, like in 2006, in our English class, we had poetry for a little while. And in that class, I read a couple of phrases, and it sort of stuck with me since then. And the four lines were, I shall pass this way but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. It said unknown at the time, so I had no idea who it was, but I just kept that in my mind all these years. So yeah. And so now I know who actually said that quote now. And I guess in a way it was reassuring. It was nice to see this, something that I had heard about a decade before. I just bumped into in the hallways of regional, and I never bothered to read this. And so, with that, it's like, this is a good sign. I'm going to go. I wanted to do this. Let's do this. So booked my flight, flew out of Philadelphia, and landed through Frankfurt and got to Krakow. So it was essentially that morning, I rounded on service. It was 3 car rides later, 2 flights later, and I got lost several times. There's a lot of roundabouts in Europe, which I just missed taking the right exit. And I was finally able to make it to Medica. So this is the gate, this is the border. When you pass beyond this, if you look over there, those are just the guards at the border. When you walk down that road, you essentially hit, you have to clear customs and immigration, and then you cross into Ukraine. And our tent was maybe about 10 yards from this border. So I'm going to show a couple of videos of what the camp layout was like, the entrance to the camp and our medical tent.
Doctor, can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
So what about you that got you to go there? What was the moment where you said, I got to do something? What, do you remember it? Do you?
I do. When this first started out, I was, in my mind, it's like the modern conventional warfare was just something you just didn't even comprehend. It's like, it's out of the question. You don't even talk about this with how things just get escalated. So I actually thought this was going to blow away in a week. Then you start reading about how it's affecting all of the people in Ukraine. You start hearing about how many lives are lost, how many people are displaced, and the need for it becomes more and more severe. And I guess it came to a point where I thought, of course, we need to help people in our own backyard, in our own community, but the number of people that would probably decide to go there is just a handful, even if it's an extra pair of hands to do this. So for me personally, I think there are things in everyone's life where you just feel compelled to do something. You don't really quite have a reason for it, but you just feel like you have an urge to act on it. You feel a deep-rooted need to do something to assist. And so for me, that was it. So it wasn't so much, oh, okay, I can just go volunteer for a bit and come back. It was more about, I'm going to go irrespective of what will transpire, between Russia and like the global, I guess, tensions that were happening. So for me, I just wanted to go and just be able to help. And that was it.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
So let me play some videos. So I'm not the best taking videos, but essentially this, okay. This is just the walkway up to the camp. You can see the tents here. These are just tents that people can rest or sleep in. It's very cold while they await transportation. So you see that bus there. So 1 second. So this is a city that I actually stayed in and would drive to every day to the border. It starts with PRZ, and I was not pronounced this correctly. So that's why no one gave me proper directions. It starts with PRZ and it's pronounced Shemshil. I don't know how, but it's pronounced Shemshil. The Ukrainians who were crossing over, they would take this bus into Shemshil, where the nearest airport, like the nearest
It's pronounced
city was located. And then initially when it started out, there weren't that many buses, but now there's more frequent buses. Over here, you have a couple more things. Since I guess since the onset of like the humanitarian crisis, some of these buildings were established. So now when you come to volunteer, you get a badge, you establish yourself, your identity. That wasn't really there initially, but it's there now. So yeah, and then there's just parking railways where essentially anyone can park. And yeah, that's about it. So that's the I guess the walkway to it, and then I'll show you a tour of the actual camp layout.
This is the entrance to the camp area. You can see this is the world central kitchen.
So as you can see here, there's a lot of nonprofits there, each with their own missions and values that they stand for.
Several nonprofits here to help out all of the people fleeing Ukraine.
About language there? How did you deal with all the different languages?
We had people, so I had Google Translate. That wasn't that helpful, but we had people that spoke English and Ukrainian and Russian. So that was helpful. Many people were able to translate. There were others.
Got the World Central Kitchen here.
And that was
This is
essentially
the border.
the border there.
And here is my tent. This tent is for the males, and that tent over there is for women and children.
And there's just a walkway where you essentially have Ukrainians just walking through as they clear, I guess, the Polish customs. And then here is a video of our medical tent.
This is the camp here. This is the tent where we provide medical care. This is just our coffee for the physicians and other volunteers of SSF. Here we have our Medicaid.
Yeah, so the way this was organized is like the WHO organization. We essentially broke it down to anti-diarrheal, anti-psychiatric, anti-diabetes, anti-hypertension, antifungal, antiviral, anti-hypertensive. So it was an easier way to classify the medications to be able to provide it quickly. Families are often passing by. You don't have that much time. I'll talk about a patient with blood pressure of 260 by 120. That was a manual check twice. He didn't have time to stay. The best I could do was just get him to take medications before you had to go. So this classification at least helped. That's our defibrillator kit that we fortunately didn't have to use. I don't think it was used yet.
Respiratory illnesses, mental disorders, so forth, diabetic medications, hypertensive medications, and so forth. This is the organization I'm working with. This essentially translates to Rescuers Without Borders. And you know, a lot of the meds that we're giving now are your typical over-the-counter medications, but there are also a lot of patients that come in with your typical sinusitis or things like that. So your antibiotics, suicide is utilized often. Some patients need their routine chronic medications like blood pressure.
Yeah, there were patients that had atrial fibrillation, needed Eliquis. We had that. We had saline bags if we had to hang a drip.
Diabetes medications. Yeah.
And then, so I'm going to pause here. So this was essentially where we just sit while patients came in, a sort of furnace there. And then you can't really see it much in the background, but there's a bed back.
This is
there.
the.
Yeah, there was a bed back there that essentially what we called our OBS unit. It was it's just like a very small bed, probably if two people sat on it, I'm not sure if it would hold up. If we started someone on a drip, just dehydration, or if we had to, just someone just wanted to rest, or someone's blood pressure was too high, we give them medications, they just wanted to rest for an hour or two. That's where they would sleep. It was just like our OBS unit. All right, let me come back to the PowerPoint. So what the volunteers that I saw there, they essentially came from all walks of life. You have people that were probably at crossroads in their own lives back home, wherever it may be, US or somewhere in Europe or Australia, maybe having a midlife crisis on their own, wanted to get away from it, came here to help out. You also have other people that said, okay, I have a family, I have like a life here, but I want to help out, came for a week or two to help and then left. But everyone came with the intention of helping these people out. Whatever you had, you gave away. There was nothing to sell, only to give away. And most of the time, if it's not, a fresh cup of coffee, like a warm coffee or warm drink or warm food, it's just to talk to people. Like I think what you're really giving these people more than anything else, more than medical help, more than food, more than water, is you're giving them hope that when these people are here to receive them at the border, you're giving them hope that, hey, after this, it's going to get better.
Had you ever done any kind of relief work before? Or was there anything in your family that acted as a motivation for this?
Relief work, no. I mean, my father's probably a very altruistic person, donated his own kidney to a random stranger, never even met them, but he supported me in this. But in terms of relief work, I've never done anything. My family hasn't done relief work, like disaster work essentially, but no. So I would be the first. I have to open this up again. So I want to show a picture. These are pictures that we hang in our medical tent. They're drawn by children. They tell stories of how, despite everything going on, they still think everything is going to work out. You can see that their parents are tense, they're stressed. But it was nice to see children being hopeful, and that's why I think people do this. You want to be able to provide that hope that there is a better future. And when you see these children, when you see the pictures that they draw, just regular normal things, you want to be able to let them have that, like just a kid drawing a car that he wants to go back to having drives back home. It just kind of reiterates how what you're doing is just helping them try to get back to that life, to try to get back to get them this essentially. So from all these pictures, there was one that particularly amused me. It was my favorite picture. It's this one. So it says Putin. Now this word hulo, there was a Ukrainian gynecologist that day. I had relieved her from night duty, and she told me what it meant. It essentially means, and this is coming from a kid probably not older than the age of 8, it means the F word. So Putin is an F word, is essentially what it translates to. Okay, so there's a medical tent for everyone, and then there's a tent for women and children. So here you see pictures where families come in, and women and children. Women are exhausted. The fathers are accompanying them. They can stay here with them at the tables. The women are allowed to sleep. The children are allowed to sleep here. There's also the volunteers who work in here are women and children. So essentially under the age of 18, you can volunteer here. And the reason for that is the people under 18 or even the mothers, they help tend to the kids. If they're active, they need someone to play with. They kind of keep them busy so the mothers can get some rest, or put the kid to sleep, or feed them, or anything they need. So people stay here for about a day or two if they need to, and then they move on. So if they just got here, they're exhausted from the travels, they will sleep here for a day, get some overnight rest, or during the day, figure out what they want to do next, where they want to go. Many of these people don't stay in Poland. I think Poland actually hit its 1 million capacity that Poland was allowed to take in, and they had to go on, whether to Germany or Spain or so forth. These are just more camps that people slept in. This is on the outskirts as you enter the camp. That's the bus that I showed earlier that people would take into town if they wanted to transit to a larger city and go from there. This is a picture that one of the volunteers prior to me coming there took a picture of. It comes in waves. People are either walking by, or it's just a group of people just come in because there was a bus that just came from a big major city in Ukraine. I want to put this picture in here. This is on my night shift, so it's the second day. I'm the only physician on night in the refugee camp, and this is a family walking by. I'll play the video after this, but it was essentially just children just happily walking by. The parents are very stressed, that don't know what to do. They have a lot more to travel. That they weren't staying in Poland, they're relaying over. I just found this scene sad in a sense. The children don't know that their lives have just changed drastically. The parents are just trying to hold it together. They actually came, got something just for generalized body aches, headache, and then they just continue to move on. I mean, there's a toddler in the background. Families are making very long journeys to be able to get to the border. And it's a little heartbreaking because the life that they've known no longer exists. The kids don't fully comprehend exactly what's going on. But when you're a kid, your mom and dad are there, so things will be okay. And the parents just continue. They do the best that they can. So now the medical conditions that I saw, a majority of these are on the left-hand side, dehydration and hypothermia, especially at nighttime. And even during the daytime, it's very cold. This is what we tend to do the most. Many people came with non-specific symptoms, headaches, fatigue, fevers. Obviously, with the COVID era, this is the first thing you think of. You don't have them, the modalities to just test every single person. And even if you did, it's not like you can just give them Paxlovid and send them off. But it's mainly over-the-counter medications that we give, in which we had an abundance of. Wounds and injuries were also present. There's a picture I was unable to get, but there's a story of a foreign exchange student. So this is while I was there. I was coming onto my shift, and there was a ED doctor from Beth Israel, so MD PhD doctor from Beth Israel, who was here, and he had a foreign exchange student. I think she was somewhere in Europe. I could be wrong. She was in Ukraine for the year. Essentially, once the war started, she spoke with her family. Essentially, she was supposed to just exit the country. They were going to meet her at Medica, the Poland border. On her way, she was in the crossfires. There was shelling from a tank that essentially resulted in some shrapnel that pierced her body. She was treated on the Ukrainian side. Shabby job, but I mean, there's a lot of injuries going on. They removed the shrapnel, sutured it up. And she just continued. She continued to get on her way to the Poland border as fast as she could. So she made the journey. She got to the Poland border, and then she was waiting on her parents to come. And she came to our tent. So Jeff, who was the ED physician, who was on duty, he saw the wound, just cleaned it up. She just said, "I don't want anything major. Just make sure it's clean. Give me something for pain." Cleaned it up, gave her something for pain, and then he said, "Hey, do you know you have a dislocated shoulder?" She's like, "Oh, is that why I haven't been able to move my arm for the past few days?" And despite that pain, despite not being able to move her arm, she just continued. Her goal was to just get out of the country as fast as possible, just dealing with the pain that she was dealing with and just continue. So that just tells you, I mean, if I have a daughter someday or a son someday, and they like, no one should have to go through that. Just with the injuries that she sustained, she just continued. Anxiety, tensions are very high. I actually didn't know about this. My mom probably knows, she loves herbal medicine. Valerian root, very popular in a lot of the world. For me, I just think, oh, you know, Xanax, but yeah. So valerian root, we had a ton of it, and it would go like on a daily basis. A lot of it would just get, people like valerian root. There are some people who say, I take this medication, you know, I take lorazepam, or so we give them medications just to help calm them. Nothing crazy saying, oh, here's a week's worth. We give them 1 or 2 tablets, and then we send them on their way. The conditions that we saw more often, the chronic medical conditions are diabetes, hypothyroidism. People have come, said, hey, I need long-acting insulin. So we give them Lantus, we give them short-acting insulin. We had the vials, we'd give it to them. Levothyroxine if they need it for hypothyroidism. The hypertension, the 260 over 120, that was a gentleman that came in. It was on my night shift. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. He said, my wife is waiting. We're getting ready to leave. I just need something. I have a headache. Checked his blood pressure. It was 260 by 140 or about that. And I said, you need to sit down. He said, no, I can't. He was actually getting ready to leave. And then because it was a translator there, we were able to just essentially negotiate, like, okay, can you take these meds before you go? Like, I maybe had another minute or 2 with him before he left. Gave him blood pressure medications. He took it and he left. There was another lady as well, came in extremely high, like blood pressure over 220, having headache, having chest pain. Gave her blood pressure medicines. At least this lady was able to listen and wait. So watched her for about 2.5, 3 hours. Blood pressure came down, but she was also in a rush to go when she left. She's like, my son's figuring out the transport. I can only wait until it figures it out. Yeah, they got the transportation and she left. Blood pressure came down. So here's some meds. Have a safe journey. And the rest of this is, you know, your typical diarrhea, GERD, patients with seizure disorder. We had Depakote on hand, would give them a few days, would ask them, where are you traveling to? Said, Germany. Okay, when are you going to get there? In 2 days or 3 days. We give them enough medications for them to get to the next country that they need to get to. At the bottom there, for skin, like cuticle abscesses, cuts, lacerations, requiring sutures. The week I was leaving, so I left on a Saturday afternoon. The week leading, like during that week, I went down to our ED. We had Dr. Lim and Dr. Patel, who were ED physicians that day, and I asked them, listen, it's been a while since I put sutures in. Can you show me how to put some sutures in? Just simple, simple interrupted sutures. They did show me how to put an IV line in, practiced, and then and it actually came in handy. I had to place sutures on a few people. So I'm going to share some stories. So this is Amit. We're actually friends on Instagram now. He's actually not a Ukrainian refugee, but he's an Israeli. He's 20 years old. He's from Israel. He actually volunteered to come here. He was actually one of the first few people I treated. So he had a splinter that got stuck in his finger, never came out, started developing like an abscess around it. So came in saying, hey, can you help me with it? I said, sure. So Jeff, the ED physician, said, hey, try this neat trick. Instead of just going in raw, just slicing it open and draining it, have the patient, you know, put their finger in lukewarm water, let the skin soften up, and just take a needle and just, you know, scrape away the skin, will come out. And sure enough, it worked. So he's 20 years old. He was going to be here for 2 weeks. And then in Israel, everyone's got to volunteer for the army at some point. So he said later this year, he's actually going to be enrolling into the army. And yeah, that is a myth. This is Nina. Nina is 86 years old. I was on my night night duty when I got a call. We have patrols who are volunteers, just walk through the camp at nighttime, just make sure everything's okay. And I was called on because she just walked through the border and almost collapsed. She had a neurosyncopial episode. They called me, and then we got a translator, and then we put her in a wheelchair, and then we got her into the tent for women and children. So she started talking. Nina has 2 children, 3 grandchildren. Her son is in Ukraine in the army fighting. Her daughter is in Germany, and she was supposed to meet her granddaughter, her daughter's daughter, at the Poland border to take her to Germany. So her story is, so she's actually a gynecologist who then became the medical director of a local nuclear plant or factory. But just to backtrack, she said over the past few days, she had been traveling nonstop. She wanted to leave several times, but couldn't because of all of the essentially the bombs, the shellings. And finally, she decided one day just to do it. She was traveling with a group. They were stopped several times by Russians. And then when they were stopped, they would make the males get out of the transportation vehicle, undress them, humiliated them, and then get back in the car and let them go. So she said this happened with the Russians several times. And then towards the end, the half day or so of her journey, she said that the group she was traveling with was she was slowing them down. So she was actually left behind. She essentially had 2 bags that she was carrying, and she ran into someone else, and she said that person helped carry my luggage, and she just continued towards the Polish border. And as soon as she crossed the border, she essentially almost collapsed. So this is her. I mean, at the age of 86, I mean, my grandmother's, I think, 82 or 83. How she was able to make that journey, 2-day journey in the cold, in the rain, especially at nighttime, is just beyond me. I mean, hearing her story was really inspirational. Like, I wouldn't want my own grandmother to go through that. I wouldn't want any family to go through that. But that was Nina's story. So the next couple of pics is, so it's the last day of my in my stay in at Medica. I just finished my shift. It's about 4 p.m. I thought, okay, let me just get some just close my eyes for like 5-10 minutes, relax, and then I should probably start saying bye to people and then leave. I had a flight later that morning, or I guess I had to drive about 3 hours to Krakow, and then turn the car in and just wait for my flight. It was early hours of the following day. So I was actually getting ready to leave in another hour and a half or 2 hours. And there's a paramedic I treated earlier that day from this group. It's a Norwegian group. These guys here and her. So she's from New Orleans, and she came in. So they couldn't say my full name, Chaitanya, so they just said Dr. Chai. So she came in saying, Dr. Chai, we have a lady on the other side who needs help. And it's like as a resident, when you get admission at the last moment, you're like, oh man. But she came in, and then I was like, and she specifically was like, you need to come with me. And I was like, okay, what's wrong? And she's like, she has a leg infection. So I just presume it's probably cellulitis. We created this field kit, that little red bag, essentially took some antibiotics, took things I could clean a wound with. And then we crossed the border. We were all instructed to tell our coordinator, if something happens. I couldn't find my coordinator, so I just crossed the border, knowing full well she would lose her mind. So we didn't tell her. So this is Ehud. He's a anesthesiology Italian from Italy. He's an anesthesiology resident in 2nd year as well. So we both just went. So we crossed the border where we had a driver waiting for us. He took us to the settlement where the lady was. So it was a very, let me see if I can pull up the video. Yeah. I couldn't get much of a video. That many people were happy to see that there was a doctor there, and then we're hoping they could get help. And so they would just, let me show the, yeah. So this is what I was called for. I presumed it was cellulitis. It's actually not. It's like more like mummified toes versus dry gangrene. So the other foot you see here is a paramedic who talked me into crossing the border. She had lost her toes. And so you see the comparison here. So on the other side of this, on the sole of the foot, it's more like cellulitis on the other side. Anyway, we couldn't do anything about it, but we told her, you need to have this surgically removed. You need to go to a hospital in Ukraine. We tried to convince her to come back with us and onto the Polish side. She said she couldn't leave. The following day was Easter. She said she was waiting for her family to come get her so she can celebrate Easter with them. So essentially gave her the antibiotics, cleaned up the wound. And there were several other individuals who had complaints, wanted a medical checkup. We gave the medical checkup to them, but we didn't bring the supplies. So we said, the following day, someone's going to come back and get you medical supplies. So once we finished looking at everyone, it was about time to go. And now we're waiting outside. Our driver left. I'm not kidding. Like we came outside and our driver's nowhere to be found. So this is everyone just trying to figure out, like, this guy over here is like, do we have signal, like, despite crossing the border? It wasn't too far, but don't have reception anymore because it's a different country. But yeah, no signal. Everyone's trying to figure out, do we have transportation or not? This gentleman, I believe, was the only soldier in the building. So he spoke English and he just said, wait here. He said, wait here. And then we're just waiting. And then he comes out with this other gentleman and he says, he will take you. And then this guy we've never seen before, he just says, follow me. And so we just get into a car with a random stranger in the hopes that he will take us back to the Polish border. And he did. So these are just some pictures I just took along the way. It was just from a periphery. Ukraine was beautiful. So this is the last story I guess I wanted to share. This is Sasha. I put this at the end because I think when I heard his story, the world would be a better place if we had more Sashas. He wears a Ukrainian flag. He's actually a refugee himself. He fled. He lives in Mariupol. He has a wife and a daughter. They were separated when the war broke out. They were trying to flee Mariupol. They got separated, and he made his way to Poland, hoping that his family would do the same. And it's been about 2 months now. He has not heard from his family. Mariupol has just been completely reduced to, rubble. He hasn't heard from his family, but he wears this Ukrainian flag, volunteers as someone to just help out anyone who's crossing through. This is the border here. This is the gate, and he stands there every day around 8 a.m. till late evening. He stands there. Any refugee that comes by, he grabs their luggage. He helps them out. He speaks Ukrainian, which is very comforting for people who cross over. Tells them this is what the camp has to offer. This is what this tent needs. This is provides. This is where the transportation is. These are all the places you can go. Do you need a cell phone? Do you need a SIM? Do you need medical help, food, water, anything? So he just stands there, and then once he helps that family out, he walks right back and does this. And he's been doing this, and he says he will continue to do this. People that come through from Mariupol, he asks them, "Hey, have you seen my family? What was the situation like?" But no word from his family. And despite that, he says, "I will continue to do this until the war ends." So I finished my last shift and I'm driving back now, and I want you to just focus on the vehicles on the left-hand side. This is the line of vehicles going back into Ukraine. So leave some of the trucks, but all these, it's much longer. It was about 14 kilometers, so about 8.89 miles of vehicles. There were many males that came with their family, dropped them off. They were safe. They wanted to go back into the country to fight. So I ran into several males that said that and they want to do that. Others were traveling to go back. It was Easter the following day, want to go back in. But the line just extended for miles and miles. So that's the end of the talk, but I'm gonna leave you with this quote. This is from a book, Jack London. Essentially, what he says is, "The function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. And I believe everyone who comes here to provide humanitarian work, to come help these refugees, this is essentially, I think why they want to come. They know that whatever work they do here is going to make a big difference in the people that are affected. Now, that's a Hebrew word I learned. Just means, they told me it meant go easy or be easy, be relaxed. That's it. Thank you.
Doctor, that was inspiring, and we thank you for that. Just some housekeeping, and we have a few minutes for questions. We've got a very large crowd on Zoom today. Just some housekeeping. This will be our last. This will be the third time we'll shut down in conference room conferences, and we'll go back to virtual starting next week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, virtual only. Okay, our positivity rates in the area are up, and per hospital protocol, we'll be going back virtual only starting next week. But I thank you for all showing up today. And
Peter, I have a question before you close.
including the people on the line, we get our CME credits through your evaluation forms. And Mara said you represent the best of us. That's beautiful, Mara. Thank you so much.
Peter, I do have a question.
Yes, Patrick.
One, let me just say, outstanding presentation. Not only an outstanding trip, an important topic, but truthfully, just just the way it was presented, truly professionally, truly well done. So I appreciate it both aesthetically and from what you presented and what you've done. It certainly brings up a question. I know Pete had commented on this earlier. Some of us can't get on a plane and go someplace for various reasons. But are there ideas and ways that we can help, including writing checks, and who could we do that to?
So SSF is one organization. There are several others. The way this continues to work is there are volunteers that come to help. If you can't help, if you go on their websites, they're always looking for donations, medical supplies, clothes, and I believe on their website you can donate money if you'd wanted to. Just before I was going, Dr. Clamp had some things that he was able to donate, simple things, even gauze, things like that.
Well, that segues into my next comment. Late last night, we had the idea of contacting the two medical staff presidents and have asked them for a donation. So in your honor, the medical staffs are making a donation to Ukrainian relief efforts. And my former partner, Dr. Conaboy, threw in a check of his own. So in your honor, we're going to be making a contribution. So
Thank you.
Peter, Ken Lilick on the line.
hold on one second, Ken. We're going to get to line calls. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Michael Curran.
Michael, I'm going to give you the mic so the Zoom crowd can hear you.
This is Michael Curran. I'm the new CEO for the hospitals. I just want to thank you for allowing me to be the privilege to be here to hear your story and your commitment to taking care of people. And I want to, I'll discuss it with the appropriate parties, but I'd like to offer for the hospitals to also make a donation in your name to further the relief efforts. I think we all need to be supporting work like this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other questions?
Peter,
Ken Lilick, you got a question, Ken?
yes, I'm actually part of the group at St. Vladimir's Church. We've sent out 5,500 boxes to the Ukraine, just our small parish. And most of them have been medical supplies. Now we have a list of that we got from troops as well as from small medical groups out there. But our church sends money. We've been supporting 4 orphanages even prior to the Russian invasion. And the orphanages are taking in refugees right now. Many of them have relocated to the West, but they're taking care of many, many people. And there's several ways that we're sending product out there. Many of them are by flight, but also by ship. Now, it costs a great deal to fly out goods. It costs $2.50 per pound just to mail things out. But we've got a great experience in doing this, and we've collected a lot of money. The people of the community have been very, very generous, and it's been a great benefit. There's been a lot of community people that have been setting up funds, and we give part of the funds to the eparchy, which is the diocese of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, and they send money to the Ukraine, but part of it goes directly to the troops, at least in terms of the goods. We know exactly where to send them, and we don't have to go through a organization. We actually have addresses. People send them to Poland, and from Poland, they actually drive them to wherever they have to go to in the Ukraine, as long as it's safe. Our priest, his brother, was a musical conductor in the Ukraine, and he's now a major in the Ukrainian army, and he's in the fight. He has 3 children who are no longer in the Ukraine, and his wife, they had to flee into Western Europe. But his mother is still there, and he's got others, sister and other brother that are still there. So this is something that our parish is going through. We get updates daily, and we know what's going on, at least from his perspective.
Thank
And
you.
we are collecting funds to the parish at St. Vladimir's, and it's on North 9th Avenue in Scranton. And we were just packing boxes this morning. We were sending because they're picking them up tomorrow. So this is something that's ongoing. It's continuing.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And thanks for that information. And Deb and I will act on all this information and help coordinate some of the kindness that's coming out of our local groups. Thank the medical staff, thank the hospital, and thank you for your comments. The most important, thank you, Doctor. We really appreciate it. And I think we're all a little better because of it. And we appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great day. Stay safe. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday virtually.